Well, there are a couple of big reports out right now suggesting that conservative leader Pierre Poilievre could lose his own seat in next week's election, which, considering he was once poised to win a majority just a few months ago, would be a massive thing to happen. So, in this video, I'm going to go over the arguments that are being made and my thoughts on all of this. So I will say I put this story off a couple of weeks because at the time there wasn't a whole lot to it. But now that we have two reports from two large newspapers going over the potential here and the leaks from the Conservative Party, I think it's worth at least discussing this. Even though I want to be clear, I still think it's very unlikely. And I have my thoughts as to why the things that are happening are happening. I'll get to that. But it's worth exploring the potential here. First, a quick overview on just where the election right now sits. It is still favoring the Liberals with 42.7% support, with the Conservatives at 38.3%. Now, of course, when we go to seat projection, it is much more dramatic because of how the Conservative vote tends to be concentrated. So you have the Liberals sitting in a probability of 77% for a majority. Now, again, this is polling right now. Things can change, things can shift. It doesn't mean this is the result of the election, of course, but this is just how things currently look. And polling in Canada has tended to be fairly accurate. So let me get to the first argument here. So this is Pierre Poilievre's riding in 2021. This is when he won last time, 50% of the vote there. This is where his seat is projected this time. So it is still conservative likely, not conservative safe, but conservative likely. He's sitting around the same projection there at about half the vote. And compare that to where Mark Carney is now running. So he's now taking over the seat. This seat was won with 45% of the vote by the Liberals last time. It is now projected to be a Liberal safe seat. And Carney, as you would expect, has boosted support for the Liberals in that riding. So just the contrast there. And it's worth noting, Nepean, Mark Carney's riding, is right next to Carleton. They are side by side. So I'll get to more when we get to the maps on these ridings in a minute here. But let's get to the first big story. This is from the Toronto Star. Conservatives pour resources into Pierre Poilievre's riding amid fears of a tight race. So the federal Conservatives are funneling resources into Pierre Poilievre's local campaign, shoring up volunteer support in the leader's Ottawa area riding over concerns that winning his seat is not guaranteed, the Star has learned. So the arguments being made here are coming from a few leakers. So one conservative source involved in Poilievre's campaign told the Star that the leader appears to be in trouble in Carleton and that they have called in additional volunteers to help knock on doors and assist with the campaign. Two other federal conservative sources, both of whom are not working directly on the national campaign, said Poilievre's team has reached out to party supporters looking for volunteers to help because of fears the leader's victory may not be assured, with one source suggesting Poilievre could lose his seat. A spokesperson for Poilievre's campaign said in a statement that the Star was misinformed and that no riding is ever taken for granted, but we are confident Pierre Poilievre will be returned to Parliament to represent Carleton. Quote, as I am sure you can understand, there are many politically engaged volunteers and staff across the capital region. So, and as they write, they are being distributed across Ottawa ridings. So before I get to my thoughts on why this is happening, I want to get to the other story here that is reported. It's the Globe and Mail. Poilievre may lose his Ottawa area riding as Liberals poised to sweep the region. So they also jump on the fact that volunteers are being brought into the riding. Writing here, it is standard practice in the final week of a campaign for war room staff to be sent to ridings that are either vulnerable or have the chance of an upset victory. So this is the first argument that is being made, that they are bringing all these volunteers into Poilievre's riding, showing that there is a real weakness here that he may lose the riding. Look, again, playing devil's advocate, my take is that they're afraid he may lose his 10-point margin. I think they want to ensure that he maintains appears to be a strong leader, even if Conservatives don't form government. They want to make it appear that Poilievre has been able to maintain his support. So it doesn't mean that necessarily he might lose the riding. It just may mean his lead is cut down to 5% as opposed to 10%. So I think that's more likely why they're bringing in volunteers, not that they are really afraid of him actually losing the seat. That said, they go on to make some more arguments here. So two sources in the Ontario PC party say an internal poll completed Tuesday shows the Liberals hold a 53% advantage in Ottawa area ridings, with the Conservatives at 31% and the NDP at 10%. The Doug Ford-led party did not poll in Carleton. However, the senior federal Liberal insider said the Liberals have polled in the riding, and Mr. Fanjoy is in a dead heat with Mr. Poilievre at 48% and 49%, respectively. The Liberals polled 381 people, and the results have a margin of error of plus or minus 3 percentage points 19 times out of 20. So this is Liberal polling that shows it much closer than anybody else, just to be clear on, I guess you could say the bias there. That said, this is really what I find striking, is just that Ottawa area ridings have such a major Liberal advantage, and Poilievre is right there. So I'm going to get to the electoral maps in a second here, but as they write, Mr. Poilievre's riding is one of 290 districts with boundaries that have changed since the past election in 2021. But a globe analysis of the new boundaries shows that they would not have had an impact on the results had they been in place in 2021. So let me show you the old map and the new map and what that could mean. Here is the old map. So this is 2021. This is the results. This is when Pierre Poilievre won this ride in Carleton. Or I should say won it again. So the map, or I should say his district or his riding, has now extended into Canada. So we take a look at the new boundaries, and Carleton now moves around Canada. So Carleton has essentially picked up some more rural areas surrounding Canada, and that has, I would think, that would bolster Poilievre's support in Carleton, because he's not moving into, an urban center. He's picking up more rural areas, which you would think would lean more towards his support base. That said, it is worth noting, of course, that area that is picking up was Liberal. But Liberal likely largely because of the vote from suburban Canada, and not necessarily because of the rural spots around it. So I superimpose the new map onto the old one, and you can see how Carleton now extends out into this area here. But again, based on the globe analysis, based on just looking at this here, I don't think this is really a worry for Pierre Poilievre. What the bigger worry is, I think, is the fact that Nepean is right next door. And there's more of a focus on these Ottawa area ridings because of it. But a senior Liberal campaign organizer also told the Star, on the condition that they not be named, that the 10 to 12 point polling advantage that Poilievre had in his riding of Carleton a few weeks ago has been halved. So this is where I'm leaning more towards. The fact that Poilievre has lost support in his riding, and that they want to be able to make it seem like he is still strong and get back to that 10-point advantage, and not necessarily that he's going to lose the riding. But one last argument that is being made that is worth mentioning here is the fact that there are 91 registered candidates for that seat. So the riding is held by Poilievre. This ties the record for the most number of candidates in an election. So there is a reason for this. 85 of the candidates registered to run in Carleton are associated with the electoral reform group, the Longest Ballot Committee. So the Longest Ballot Committee protests Canada's first past the post system. On its Blue Sky account, the group says it is having fun breaking records, while pointing out that politicians shouldn't be in charge of their own ethics and election rules. So first past the post, in case you forgot, the Liberals in 2015 made one of their big platform promises to change the electoral system, because the system is ridiculous. And there was going to be some form of proportional representation that would better represent Canadians. And of course, that was abandoned almost immediately. But I love what this group is doing. continuing the focus on electoral reform. And, that has not been a discussion during this election, but I hope this continues to come up in the future, as this is something that needs to be addressed. First past the post just does not make much of any sense, and there are better ways to run an electoral system. But I want to know your thoughts. Do you think there is any juice here? Do you think Pierre Poilievre could really lose his riding, or does this really just appear to be a way to try and save his 10-point margin?